Before we begin, make sure you're somewhere quiet. Turn off the lights. Put on your headphones. Because the stories you're about to hear aren't just scary. These are the kinds of experiences people don't talk about. If you enjoy true horror stories, unsettling encounters, and disturbing events that happen to real people, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, let's begin. When I was 13, my parents moved us to a rural town in northern Pennsylvania. The kind of place where houses were miles apart, roads had no streetlights, and the woods felt endless in every direction. Behind our new house was a massive stretch of forest. Old forest. The kind where trees grow so close together that sunlight barely touches the ground. And buried deep inside those woods was a tree house. Not one we built. It was already there. My dad noticed it first while clearing brush near the tree line. He called me over, pointing between the trees. About 40 yards into the woods, nailed into the trunk of a thick oak, was a wooden platform. It sat about 15 feet off the ground, half hidden by branches and leaves. A rope ladder dangled from the side, swaying gently even though there was no wind. I remember feeling excited at first. What kid wouldn't? But my dad didn't look excited. He looked confused. This wasn't mentioned when we bought the property, he said. Probably something the previous owner's kids built. The previous owner was an elderly man who'd lived there alone for decades. He didn't have kids. Still, my parents brushed it off. Old properties come with old surprises. A week later, my dad helped me climb up and check it out. The tree house was wrong. It was solid. Too solid. Thick boards, metal nails, reinforced corners. This wasn't something kids slapped together on a weekend. It felt permanent. Like it had been built to last. Inside, there was nothing except a single wooden bench nailed to the wall. No trash. No toys. No signs of animals. Just deep scratches carved into the inside walls. Long lines, uneven, overlapping, like someone had dragged their fingernails across the wood over and over again. Dad told me not to worry. Probably raccoons, he said. But raccoons don't climb rope ladders and scratch walls from the inside. He told me I could use it as long as I didn't stay out late. That was my first mistake. I started spending afternoons in the tree house. Reading. Drawing. Sometimes just sitting and listening to the woods. But every time I climbed down, I felt watched. Not from the trees. From below. The ground beneath the tree house was always darker than the rest of the forest floor. No grass grew there. Just dirt and dead leaves pressed flat, like something heavy spent a lot of time there. One evening, as the sun dipped low, I heard a sound beneath me. Breathing. Slow. Controlled. Too steady to be an animal. I froze, heart pounding, staring down through the gaps between the wooden planks. Nothing was there. But the breathing continued. Directly underneath me. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I waited. After about a minute, the breathing stopped. Then came the sound of something dragging itself away through the leaves. That night, I told my parents I didn't want to use the tree house anymore. They laughed. A few nights later, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. I don't know why. My room faced the woods. And I could hear knocking. Not on my window. From far away. Wood hitting wood. Slow. Rhythmic. Knock. Pause. Knock. Pause. I realized it was coming from the direction of the tree house. Someone was climbing it. Using the ladder. The rope creaked with every movement. My heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. I stared into the darkness outside my window, barely breathing. Then the knocking stopped. And something else began. Scraping. long, dragging scrapes against wood. Like fingernails. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, my dad went out to investigate. He came back pale. Under the tree house, buried beneath a thin layer of dirt and leaves, was a shallow pit. It wasn't an animal den. It was shaped like a person-sized space. Flattened. Worn smooth. Like someone had been sleeping there for a very long time. Inside the pit were things. Rotting blankets. Food wrappers decades old. And a child's sneaker. Only one. My parents called the police. The officers searched the woods but found nothing else. No tracks. No signs of anyone living nearby. They suggested it was probably an old squatter camp. But one officer stayed behind longer than the others. Before leaving, he told my dad something quietly. Tree houses like this don't usually belong to kids, he said. They're lookout points. My parents planned to tear it down the following weekend. But we didn't get that far. That night, I woke up to a sound directly outside my window. Breathing. Right there. Slow. Wet. I was too scared to move. Then something tapped on the glass. Once. Twice. 3 times. I squeezed my eyes shut. A whisper slid through the crack in the window frame. "You're not supposed to be up here." I screamed. Lights came on. My dad ran outside with a flashlight. There was no one there. But the ladder on the tree house was swinging violently. As if someone had just climbed down. They tore the tree house down the next morning. Underneath the platform, nailed to the bottom boards where no one would ever see unless they looked up, was a message carved deep into the wood. "This is where I watch from." We moved 3 months later. The new owners cut the entire tree down. But here's the part that still keeps me awake at night. Sometimes, when I visit my parents, I swear I can still hear breathing from the woods. Right where the tree house used to be. Waiting. I grew up in a quiet rural town where everyone knew everyone, the kind of place where kids rode bikes until sunset and nobody locked their doors. My parents' house sat at the edge of a forest that stretched for miles behind our backyard. The trees were tall, old, and packed so tightly together that sunlight barely reached the ground beneath them. When I was 13, my dad built me a tree house. It wasn't some small platform nailed between branches. It was solid. Wooden walls, a slanted roof, a ladder bolted into the trunk. He built it high up in a massive oak tree about 30 yards into the woods. From up there, you could see over the treetops and even catch glimpses of the road far away. For years, it was my escape. But I didn't know it wasn't empty. The summer I turned 16, my parents started working late shifts, leaving me home alone most evenings. That was when I began noticing small things that didn't make sense. One afternoon, I climbed up to the tree house and found the window open. I was sure I'd closed it the night before. I hated leaving it open because bugs got in. But the latch was unhooked, and the wooden shutter swung slightly in the breeze. I brushed it off. A few days later, I noticed something else. The rope ladder had been moved. Not much, just twisted slightly, as if someone had climbed it and let it swing loose instead of tying it back like I always did. I tightened it and told myself the wind must have done it. Then came the smell. A faint, sour odor inside the tree house. Not rotten. Not animal. Just stale. Like unwashed clothes mixed with damp wood. I searched everywhere. Nothing. No animals. No nests. No trash. I started locking the trapdoor whenever I left. That fall, I began hearing sounds at night. Soft ones. The kind you convince yourself aren't real. A creak from the direction of the woods. A thump that sounded like wood shifting. Once, what I swear was a cough, deep and muffled. I told myself it was branches rubbing together. But then one night, around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps. Not on the ground. Above me. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. My room faced the backyard. The tree house loomed just beyond the fence, silhouetted against the moonlight. I watched. The window up there was dark. Then something moved behind the glass. Not fast. Slow. A shadow crossing from one side to the other. I froze. The shadow stopped. And then, the window shutter closed. From the inside. The next day, I climbed up there with a flashlight and a baseball bat. My hands were shaking as I opened the trap door. Everything looked normal until I lifted the floor panel beneath the bench. Underneath were things that weren't mine. A flattened sleeping bag. Empty food wrappers. A plastic water bottle half full and cloudy. And a notebook. The pages were filled with messy handwriting. Dates. Times. And entries like, "They left at 7:14. Boy alone again. He looks up sometimes." My name was written at the top of one page. I ran. I didn't tell my parents immediately. I didn't know how. I didn't want them to think I was crazy. That night, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. At exactly 1:37 a.m., something tapped on my window. Once. Twice. 3 times. I didn't move. Then a voice whispered from outside. "Don't lock it again." The police came the next morning. They searched the tree house and the surrounding woods. They found more signs. A path worn into the forest. A shallow pit hidden under leaves. More supplies buried in plastic. But no person. They told us it was probably a transient, someone living off the grid. Then one officer pulled my dad aside. They had found something carved into the inside wall of the tree house. Deep, deliberate letters. This was mine first. That night, my parents booked a hotel. I stayed behind to grab clothes. As I packed, I heard the ladder creak. Slow. Careful. Someone climbing. Then the trapdoor handle turned. And stopped. A voice drifted through the floor. "You weren't supposed to tell." I jumped out the back door and ran barefoot down the road. The tree house was torn down 2 days later. The police never found him. Years later, a hiker went missing in those woods. When they searched the area, they found his belongings arranged neatly beneath the oak tree. And scratched into the trunk, just above where the ladder used to be, were 5 words. "Still watching from above." I don't live near trees anymore. And I never look up at them at night. Because sometimes, you're not the one who built the tree house. You're just the one who moved in last. I grew up in a small rural town surrounded by thick woods. The kind of place where your nearest neighbor is a quarter mile away and the trees block out the sky if you walk too far in. It was quiet. Too quiet sometimes. When I was 14, my best friend Ethan and I built a tree house deep in those woods. Not near the trails. Not near any property lines. We went far enough that no adult would ever accidentally stumble onto it. The tree was massive, an old oak with branches so thick you could walk across them. It took us weeks to build. Scrapwood, nails we stole from Ethan's dad's shed, rope ladders, and a warped trapdoor floor. It wasn't pretty, but it was ours. That tree house became our escape. We'd sneak out there almost every evening during summer, bring snacks, talk about dumb stuff, listen to the forest go quiet as the sun dropped. It felt safe. Hidden. Until the night we realized someone else knew it existed. It started small. One afternoon, we climbed up and noticed something strange. A soda can sat on the floor. Neither of us drank soda. It wasn't rusted. It wasn't old. The can was cold. Ethan laughed it off. Probably some hiker. But there were no trails. No reason for anyone to wander that deep. We shrugged it off. Big mistake. A few days later, we came back again. This time, the rope ladder was tied differently. Not broken. Not loosened. Retied. Ethan froze halfway up the tree. Did you do that? No, I whispered. We climbed anyway, curiosity overpowering fear. Inside the tree house, something felt off. The air smelled wrong. Like sweat. Like damp clothes left too long. Then we saw it. Carved into one of the support beams with something sharp were 3 words: lie. See you. The letters were uneven, jagged, and fresh. I felt my stomach drop. Ethan tried to joke again, but his voice shook. Okay, that's not funny. We left immediately. Neither of us talked about it to anyone. Over the next week, things escalated. Food wrappers appeared. Footprints showed up beneath the tree, barefoot footprints. Too big to be a kid's. One night, we decided to confront it. We brought flashlights. Pocket knives we didn't know how to use. We told ourselves it was just some homeless guy using the tree house at night. We were wrong. We reached the tree house just before sunset. The forest was silent, no insects, no birds. That should have been the first warning. When we climbed up, the trapdoor was already open. Inside, the space had changed. Someone had rearranged everything. Our old sleeping bags were stacked neatly. A milk crate had been turned into a seat. And hanging from a nail in the center beam was a pair of binoculars. Pointed outward. Toward the path leading back to our houses. My heart started racing. Ethan picked them up. Why would someone? That's when we heard breathing. Below us. Slow. Controlled. Directly under the tree house. Someone was standing at the base of the tree. Not moving. Not speaking. Just listening. Then a voice drifted up. Low. Calm. Adult. You boys shouldn't be up here after dark. I froze. Ethan dropped the binoculars. Who are you? He called, trying to sound brave. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow footsteps, circling the tree. Branches cracked beneath deliberate steps. The voice spoke again. I've been watching you for weeks. My chest felt tight. Please, Ethan said, we're leaving. The footsteps stopped. Then the voice said something that still haunts me. I know. The rope ladder was gone. Cut clean through. We were stuck. The man below began climbing. Not fast. Slow. Confident. Each step made the tree creak. I shined my flashlight downward. I wish I hadn't. His face was partially hidden by a hood, but I saw enough. Eyes too wide. A smile that didn't belong on a human face. Hands covered in old scars and dirt. He whispered up to us. I like when you're scared. It makes you honest. The treehouse shook as he reached the platform. Ethan screamed and kicked the trapdoor shut. The man laughed. A soft, delighted laugh. Then he started pounding on the floor beneath us. Once. Twice. Again. The nails screamed. The wood splintered. I don't know how long it lasted, seconds or minutes, but suddenly. A loud crack. One of the support boards snapped. The floor tilted. The man slipped. I heard his body crash into branches on the way down. Then silence. We didn't wait. We jumped. Scratched, bleeding, barely able to breathe, we ran. Straight through the woods. Branches tore at us. We didn't stop until we reached Ethan's house. Police were called. They searched the area. They found the tree house. They found the binoculars. They found food. But they never found him. 2 days later, the tree house was torn down. Burned. Erased. Ethan and I never spoke about it again. Years passed. Life moved on. Until last winter. I was visiting my parents when I found something in the attic. An old backpack. Not mine. Inside was a notebook. Filled with drawings. Crude sketches of 2 boys. A tree. And pages of writing. One sentence repeated over and over. They grew up, but I'm still watching. I moved out that week. I don't go into the woods anymore. And whenever I see a tree house, I wonder who built it. And who's watching from inside.